FIFA built the smartest football in history. A ball so sensitive, it can detect a single strand of human hair touching its surface. Seriously. Earlier in this very World Cup, a goal was ruled out because the ball barely brushed a player's hair. That's how precise FIFA says this technology is. So explain this. How can that exact same technology? Watch one of the biggest matches of the tournament. Watch millions of people see the exact same thing, and somehow conclude that absolutely nothing happened? Norway are out. England are through to the World Cup semifinals. But almost nobody is talking about Jude Bellingham. They're talking about a ball, a cable, and a decision that has divided the football world. Because depending on who you ask, England survived because they found another hero. Or because FIFA's most advanced technology failed at the exact moment it mattered most. And that's where this story becomes far bigger than England, far bigger than Norway, because if the technology that's supposed to remove controversy becomes the biggest controversy itself, what exactly are we trusting anymore? Today, we're breaking down every moment, every replay, every law, every VAR decision, to answer one question. Did England deserve this semifinal? Or did Norway lose to football's biggest technological failure? Before we put FIFA on trial, we have to be fair to the football. Because this wasn't some ugly controversy that ruined a terrible match. This was one of the best games of the entire World Cup. The conditions alone were enough to break players. Miami felt less like a football stadium, and more like an oven. Temperatures climbed above 113 degrees with suffocating humidity. Every sprint drained energy. Every recovery run hurt. Every tackle demanded just a little bit more. And somehow, Norway looked like the fresher team. They weren't sitting back hoping for miracles. They were playing without fear. Martin Odegaard dictated the rhythm. Erling Haaland occupied England's entire backline. Every Norwegian attack carried purpose. Then, they got exactly what they deserved. In the 36th minute, Andreas Schjelderup unleashed a beautiful finish beyond Jordan Pickford at his near post. One touch. One strike. One nation exploding with belief. Inside the stadium, Norwegian supporters began singing, "England's going home." And for the first time all tournament, it actually sounded believable. Remember, Norway had never reached a World Cup quarterfinal before this summer. Now, they were just 45 minutes away from making history. England looked rattled. The crowd felt nervous. Every minute that passed, Norway's confidence grew. But the biggest teams rarely need control. They only need one moment. And England had the one player who kept creating them. Jude Bellingham. Deep into first half stoppage time, Anthony Gordon slipped the ball inside. Bellingham drove forward. One touch to create the angle. Another to bury it beyond Nyland. 1-1. Just like that, everything changed. It was a world-class finish. Ice cold. Clinical. The kind of goal that changes tournaments. But here's where the story splits in two. Because while everyone celebrated the finish, Norway were looking somewhere completely different. Not at Bellingham. Not at Gordon. They were pointing straight into the sky. Because they believed the move should never have happened in the first place. On the surface, England had simply found another way to win. That's what great teams do. But Norway weren't protesting the finish. They weren't surrounding Jude Bellingham. They weren't asking for offside. They were all looking at exactly the same thing. The sky. Seconds before England's equalizer, Orjan Nyland launched the ball deep into England's half. And then, something strange happened. The flight of the ball suddenly changed. It didn't continue naturally. It almost looked as if something stopped it, before dropping it almost straight back down. Elliot Anderson collected it. The attack continued. Gordon found Bellingham. Goal. But Norway never celebrated the restart. Nyland immediately pointed above his head. Haaland did exactly the same. So did several Norwegian players. Even before England had finished celebrating, Norway were convinced they already knew what had happened. They believed the ball had clipped one of the suspended Skycam cables hanging above the pitch. And if they were right, the goal should never have existed. Because Law 5 is remarkably clear. If the ball touches an outside object, whether that's a camera, a cable, or any external interference, play must stop immediately. The restart isn't a goal. It is an advantage. It's a dropped ball. Which means no attack, no assist, no equalizer, no controversy. Just a completely different football match. Norway's bench knew it. Their coaching staff knew it. Stale Solbakken marched straight toward referee Clement Turpin before halftime. His assistants kept pointing upward. Not toward the players, not toward VAR. Toward the cable. Their argument wasn't emotional. It was simple. The ball changed direction because it hit something. But then FIFA answered. And somehow, their explanation created even more questions than the incident itself. FIFA didn't take long to respond. Their answer was immediate. And according to them, there was nothing to investigate. Officials explained that the connected ball technology inside the match ball had detected absolutely no contact while the ball was traveling through the air. No vibration. No impact. No signal. According to FIFA, the ball never touched the cable. End of discussion. Except, that's exactly where the story falls apart. Because this isn't just any football. This is the same technology FIFA has spent years advertising as almost impossibly accurate. They told us this ball can detect the smallest physical contact imaginable. Earlier in this very tournament, it detected a player brushing the ball with nothing more than a few strands of hair. Not a kick. Not a header. Hair. That's the level of precision FIFA promised the world. Which creates an uncomfortable question. If the sensor can register something almost invisible, how could it completely miss what millions of viewers believe was contact with a thick steel camera cable? Either the ball never touched the cable at all, or FIFA's most advanced technology has a blind spot nobody knew existed. Some analysts even suggested the antennas tracking the ball may not properly monitor objects suspended that high above the pitch. If that's true, then the system isn't actually capable of answering the very question everyone is asking. FIFA insists all 16 tracking antennas were operating normally. They also pointed to television footage, arguing that the suspended camera never visibly shook. Case closed. But football has never been played inside computer data. It has always been played in real moments, with real players, reacting to what they see. Orjan Nyland didn't hesitate. Holland didn't hesitate. Norway's bench didn't hesitate. Every one of them reacted instantly, before there was time for replays. Before there was time for slow motion, before anyone had heard FIFA's explanation. They all believed exactly the same thing. They had seen the ball hit something. And now, football was asking millions of people to ignore what their own eyes believed, and trust a computer instead. But even if you believe FIFA got the cable incident right, Norway would still have another reason to feel robbed. Because barely 10 minutes later, the match produced another decision. And this one exposed something far more dangerous. Norway thought they had scored again. A corner caused complete chaos inside England's penalty area. The ball eventually fell to Torbjorn Hegem, who smashed it into the net. Norwegian players exploded in celebration. England looked beaten. Then, VAR stepped in. Not after 30 seconds. Not after a quick glance. They examined the build-up frame by frame. Every movement. Every touch. Every piece of contact. Eventually, they found it. Erling Haaland, using both hands, had pushed Elliot Anderson moments before the goal. The referee was called over. The replay played. The goal disappeared. Under FIFA's interpretation of the laws, it's a decision you can absolutely defend. Haaland did extend his arms. There was contact. By the letter of the law, disallowing the goal makes sense. But here's where Norway's frustration exploded. Because the push wasn't the problem. The inconsistency was. VAR spent minutes searching every frame of a crowded corner, until it found enough evidence to cancel Norway's goal. Yet only minutes earlier, when the ball appeared to change direction in open play, there wasn't the same determination to investigate. No endless replay. No forensic analysis. No search for every possible angle. One incident received a microscope. The other, barely received a second look. And that's exactly why so many people stopped arguing about individual decisions and started questioning the system itself. But here's where the story becomes genuinely complicated. Because if we're being completely honest, not every decision went against Norway. And not every argument made by FIFA is easy to dismiss. Let's start with the cable. Despite what millions believed they saw, there is still no definitive proof that the ball actually made contact. FIFA's connected ball technology recorded nothing. The television camera never visibly shook. And from a referee's perspective, you cannot overturn one of the biggest goals of the tournament based only on suspicion. Even respected refereeing analysts admitted that VAR isn't designed to monitor suspended camera cables during an attacking move. Its job is to review football incidents, not search the roof of the stadium for something that might have happened. Then there's Norway's disallowed goal. Strip away the emotion. And Holland did use both hands. Under FIFA's current interpretation, that's enough. Harsh? Maybe. Wrong? Not necessarily. And England fans have another point that often gets ignored. Jude Bellingham's winning goal had absolutely nothing to do with camera cables or controversial technology. Orjan Nyland spilled a routine shot. Bellingham reacted first. And world-class players punish mistakes like that. That's football. Even Erling Haaland himself refused to call it a robbery. He described it as a 50-50 decision and admitted England deserved respect. Norway manager Ståle Solbakken said something similar. He could spend days complaining, but it wouldn't change the result. And perhaps that's the strongest argument of all. When the people who suffered the decision speak with more balance than the people watching from home. Maybe the truth isn't as simple as conspiracy or corruption. Maybe the real problem lies somewhere else entirely. And that's exactly where this stops being a story about England or Norway. Because football fans have argued over controversial decisions for generations. Referees make mistakes. Linesmen miss offsides. Human error has always been part of the sport. But that's not what FIFA sold us. FIFA promised something different. They promised certainty. A ball smart enough to feel the smallest touch. Cameras accurate to the millimeter. Artificial intelligence removing human error from football's biggest moments. That was the promise. The problem is that the technology itself isn't what's damaging FIFA anymore. It's the people deciding when that technology deserves to matter. Because think about what happened here. One incident received an investigation that lasted minutes. Every frame was analyzed. Every contact examined. Every possible foul considered. Then another incident. One that potentially changed the entire direction of a World Cup quarterfinal. Never received that same level of scrutiny. That's the inconsistency people remember. Not because one decision favored England, but because nobody watching can explain why the standard suddenly changed. And once football supporters lose confidence in consistency, they stop believing in fairness. That's the real damage. Not one goal. Not one match. Trust. Because technology only works when people trust the people using it. Remove that trust, and the most advanced system in football becomes nothing more than another opinion. That's exactly why this tournament has felt different. It isn't just this match. It isn't just Norway. Week after week. Another controversy. Another explanation. Another debate. Another promise that the system worked exactly as intended. Until eventually, fans stop asking whether a decision was correct and start assuming something has gone wrong before the replay has even finished. That's the reputation FIFA created. Not because people enjoy conspiracy theories, but because inconsistency has become predictable. And for an organization built on trust, that's a far bigger problem than any single refereeing decision. So where does all of this leave us? England are exactly where they wanted to be. Another World Cup semifinal. Another chance to end nearly 60 years of waiting. Jude Bellingham is playing the football of his life. Harry Kane continues to deliver. And despite everything, they're still standing. But if you strip away the celebrations, there's another story quietly following them. One that won't disappear after the final whistle. Because no matter how brilliantly Bellingham played, no matter how deserved England's victory may ultimately have been, millions of people walked away talking about the officials instead of the football. And that's never supposed to happen. Norway leave this World Cup with their heads held high. A nation that had never reached this stage proved it belongs among football's elite. Holland inspired an entire country. Odegaard controlled games against the world's biggest teams. They didn't leave with the trophy, but they left with something just as important: respect. Yet they'll always wonder, what if? What if the ball really touched that cable? What if that goal had never stood? What if history changed because of one decision nobody can fully explain? Maybe we'll never know. And that's exactly the problem. Football can accept mistakes. It always has. What football struggles to accept is uncertainty pretending to be certainty. Technology was supposed to remove doubt. Instead, it has created a brand new kind of doubt. One where fans no longer argue only about what happened. They argue about whether the technology itself can even be trusted. That's a dangerous place for the game to be. Because once supporters stop believing in the process, every future decision becomes another controversy waiting to happen. Maybe FIFA got every major decision in this match absolutely right. Maybe they didn't. But the fact that half the football world still can't agree, despite all the technology available, tells you everything you need to know about where the game is today. So now, the question belongs to you. If you were sitting in that VAR room, would you have allowed Bellingham's equalizer? Or would you have ruled that the ball touched the cable and changed the course of the World Cup? Let me know your verdict below, because this debate is far from over.